Good morning, Brew Daily Show. I'm Neal Freyman.
And I'm Toby Howell.
Today, is big tech single-handedly saving the nuclear industry? Yeah.
Then, thanks to the FTC, your gym subscription is about to get a lot easier to cancel. It's Thursday, October 17th. Let's ride.
Boo. Ha! Don't mean to scare you early this morning, but it is spooky season, and Americans can't get enough of haunted hayrides and downright ghoulish experiences. According to the National Retail Federation, 18% of U.S. adults visited a haunted attraction last year, about 46.5 million people. Haunted houses in general are a $500 million industry. Toby, what makes a good haunted house?
First of all, my heart rate is still going from that boo at the beginning of the show. I will tell you what makes a good haunted house, and that is bringing a date with you. This was huge in Florida where I grew up, going to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal or Hallowscream at Busch Gardens. Gets the heart rates elevated, everyone's adrenaline is pumping, but just try to control the octaves of your screaming, because one ill-timed jump scare leading to a voice crack infused shriek can really kill the move. But yeah, this was big in the dating scene amongst high schoolers.
I'm just wondering how you follow that up. What's the second date after a haunted house?
I mean, some people just go multiple times over the weekend. They just run it back again and again. But yeah, it is tough to come down from like the adrenaline infused date. I think that's why people like haunted houses though, because you don't get that adrenaline. You don't get your blood pumping in the modern day very much. So going to a haunted house, very controlled environment, can be very cathartic for some people. And that's why it is such a gigantic business. And we got to find one in New York City to go to. Now, a word from our sponsor, Wendy's. Neal, what are you smiling at over there?
Oh, just doing a little daydreaming. About breakfast, specifically Wendy's breakfast burrito.
We got a show to record, and you're thinking about breakfast burritos?
Toby, fresh cracked eggs, seasoned potatoes, gooey cheese, sausage or bacon all wrapped in a warm tortilla. You try to get that image out of your head.
Oh, and now I'm imagining the smell, too.
It's simply divine.
Should we just skip the rest of the show and head over to Wendy's now?
Don't tempt me with a good time. If you're looking for a delicious breakfast on the go, head to your nearest Wendy's to try the Wendy's breakfast burrito. Staring down a shortage in electricity to fuel their power-hungry AI data centers, big tech is taking the nuclear option literally. This week, Google and Amazon both announced landmark projects to source power from nuclear plants, providing a lifeline to an industry that many considered too radioactive to remain viable. On Monday, Google said it would sign a contract to purchase nuclear energy from startup Kairos Power, the first time a tech company has ever commissioned a new nuclear power plant. Then yesterday, Amazon one-upped its tech rival by announcing 3 different projects, including a $500 million investment in reactor developer X Energy. For big tech, nuclear power kills 2 birds with 1 stone, if you'll excuse the cliche. The first problem, soon there's not going to be enough electricity in America's grid to power their data centers that underpin the AI boom. Without data centers, there's no ChatGPT, and without enormous amounts of electricity, there's no data centers. The second problem, tech companies have ambitious goals to cut their carbon emissions, but with all the power that AI requires, those targets are at risk. Enter nuclear power. Nuclear is a reliable power source to pair with data centers, and it doesn't emit planet-warming greenhouse gases. Big tech and nuclear, like Lana Del Rey and the Alligator Tour Guide, it's a marriage no one saw coming.
That is a deep cut reference right there. But you are right. One of the big winners here, too, in this big tech embrace of nuclear power are these smaller modular reactors. The United States wants to achieve these really big climate goals by certain dates, 2035. And if they want to get there, these small modular reactors are going to be a big reason why that happens. They have a number of advantages over those traditional hulking bigger reactors that you typically think of when you associate with nuclear power. One, just reduced construction costs. They are smaller, so it doesn't take as much money or as much time to spin them up. 2, they're more flexible, so they are suitable for maybe smaller grids in remoter areas, which again is where some of these new power plants are starting to pop up. And then 3, it's just a smaller upfront investment. You don't have to plow as much cash into them. A lot of these reactors and a lot of these deals that we just spoke about are currently under development. Like these aren't going to come online and start producing power for the grid until a few years down the line. So one thing that you need is these big upfront investments, which is why nuclear is so happy that big tech is embracing it, because they are willing to pay a premium. They are willing to put that upfront investment in and make sure that those next generation smaller reactors are being deployed. And so eventually you can bring the cost down in total. So this is just a huge win for these tinier reactors, because big tech is willing to basically foot the bill in order to create these, do the R&D necessary to bring these online.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. They're you said they're small modular reactors, but they're still super expensive. And they're like, who is our first customer here? Who is going to foot the bill? And all of a sudden, big tech is coming along out of nowhere because of this AI revolution that just happened a few years ago, and says, wow, we are looking at power grids that are going to be strained. The amount of power that data centers specifically are going to require is about to double in the next few years. Oh, hey, look at nuclear power. That is very good for data centers, because unlike they are investing, and big tech is investing in solar and wind energy, but data centers, unlike other industrial processes, they run 24/7. You don't close down a data center like you would maybe a factory. So the fact that nuclear is there, which runs 24/7, it provides a stable base layer of power, is very attractive to them. And we didn't even mention maybe one of the biggest projects, which happened a few weeks ago, is that Microsoft, through a deal with Constellation Energy, is bringing back one of the reactors at 3 Mile Island, home to the biggest partial meltdown in U.S. history. So you have Microsoft, Amazon, and Google all inking these huge nuclear deals just because of AI. And when do you hear big tech and climate goals come, align? And that's what we're seeing right now just because of AI. It's kind of a twilight zone.
And then finally, Amazon, I just want to touch on, who signed the deal yesterday, might be one of the most power hungry of all the big tech companies, because not only does it have AI ambitions, it also has Amazon Web Services, which has long been this product that relies on very large data centers that are very power hungry to just power. So Amazon is looking down the road and saying, like, all right, if we want to scale up our AI ambitions, people are going to rely more heavily on Amazon Web Services. We are going to need nuclear as well. So Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they are very power hungry. Nuclear seems to be the solution for them. And that's why they're willing to plow so much money up front into these new age reactors.
Experimental, because they have not, none of these small modular reactors have ever come online. The first one for Google might happen in 2030 due to regulatory approval and things like that. So we're still years out. This is a long-term solution.
The semiconductor chip industry toppled to some serious losses to start out this week after one of its foundational companies showed some out-of-character weakness in its Q4 earnings report. ASML, often dubbed the most important company you've never heard of, is a Dutch manufacturer that sells the immensely complicated ultraviolet lithography machines that chip makers use to fabricate delicate pieces of silicone. But despite the precision machines it sells, this week ASML had a mess of an earnings call. Not only did it forecast much weaker demand in 2025 than analysts were expecting, but it also mistakenly dropped its earnings report a day earlier than scheduled thanks to a technical error. Its slip-up prompted a meltdown for chip stocks around the globe, with an index of the largest U.S. and Asian stocks losing about $420 billion in market value. This was a bit of a shock to the system, because if demand for the machines who make the chips to train AI models is falling, that means AI demand might be softening as well. Is this more of an ASML issue, Neal, alone, or is it indicative of a broader slowdown?
It looks like just an ASML issue. They reported that they only got half the orders investors had expected, but in the recent hours, actually, we got heartening news that this was not necessarily indicative of a global downturn in the chip industry, which is what the biggest fears were. TSMC, which is the biggest chip maker in the world out of Taiwan, just a few hours ago reported very good earnings, and it raised its forecast for the year ahead. It said sales were going to climb 30% in U.S. dollar terms compared to previous projections of a mid 20% rise, and TSMC is, along with ASML and Intel and NVIDIA, one of the most important players in the chip industry. So the fact that it came out this morning and said, nah, all good here, that is definitely heartening to markets. So we should say, I don't want to say anything because it's still 6 a.m., but we should see chip stocks rise thanks to TSMC. But really, this wasn't necessarily about AI demand because ASML said AI demand is fine. The problem is, we forget when we talk about AI all the time that semiconductors go into a lot of other products like automobiles, PCs, and smartphones. And that's where it said there was not as much demand and chip makers had built a huge inventory glut that they just didn't need to order any more machines.
And then one of the issues as well is that it looks like business in China is going to get a little tougher. Last month, the U.S. rolled out these really punitive restrictions on sending critical technologies to China. The Dutch government also announced similar sort of restrictions over exports of ASML's machines to the country. So that China market for them is probably about to dry up even more so than it already has, specifically on they only sell one type of machine to China, but even that looks like it's about to be cracked down upon. So that's another reason for maybe the more muted forecast. But yeah, Neal, you want to kind of nerd out on ASML a little bit because these machines are extremely expensive, extremely complicated to make. Why are they such an important part of the semiconductor supply chain?
Well, basically, the ASML owns a monopoly on the most complicated or advanced machines that allow you to make semiconductors. They're called extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. They cost up to $200 million per machine. So that means ASML basically only has 5 customers. Intel, Samsung, TSMC. These are the only chip makers that can possibly afford to buy a $200 million machine. They basically use tiny beams of light to imprint minuscule circuits onto silicon wafers using the tiniest light wavelengths you can even imagine. I mean, the transistors that they print onto these silicon wafers are 10,000 times smaller than a human hair. So imagine how complex and precise this machine is, but it's also big. So a lot of ASML's customers are in Asia, in Taiwan. So the way you have to transport these machines, because they're so massive, you disassemble them and then you put them onto 20 trucks and 3 loaded Boeing 747s to ship to customers. So the whole process of saying, okay, I want to order a machine from you is not as much, you can't just put it in FedEx. This is insanely complicated stuff, and that's why they cost $200 million, but absolutely underpins our entire semiconductor economy.
It's like the world's most complicated Lego project right there. You have to disassemble and then reassemble with just the entire weight of the world economy on your shoulders. The gym membership that is harder to get out of than benching 225. The cable company's customer service rep that suddenly turns into Will Hunting when you call and try to cancel your subscription. These are the headaches that everyday Americans might no longer have to deal with after the FTC issued a crackdown on the arduous process of canceling a subscription. According to new rules dubbed Click to Cancel, outlined yesterday, gyms, retailers, and any businesses with a sign-up option have to make canceling subscriptions as easy as signing up. In other words, if you sign up for something with one click online, you have to be able to unsign up in the same amount of steps. The crackdown from the FTC comes after Lina Khan said the agency receives around 70 complaints a day relating to frustrations around canceling subscriptions, a number that has skyrocketed in recent years. I would imagine a lot of you listening to this have been sent on a wild subscription canceling goose chase at some point when an unexpected charge pops up. But now that goose chase will ideally be a lot shorter.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those things in life that just super annoying that you kind of have to deal with on a daily basis, but it just kind of permeates the base level of your being. And Lina Khan, the FTC chair, has just taken it upon herself to say, this is under the purview of my agency to crack down on companies that are making consumers' life worse. So this is one of those instances that she has cracked down on and says, businesses, you have to stop. You have to make canceling businesses as easy as it is to sign up. And this is not the only action that the FTC has taken in this realm. Remember, last year they sued Amazon for allegedly duping millions of people into Amazon Prime subscriptions and then making it really hard to cancel. They also sued Adobe over deceiving subscriptions. But people seem to narrow in on gyms and Planet Fitness in particular for their very hard to cancel practices.
Yeah, I mean, you hear some of these stories. One person signed up for a Planet Fitness, decided, never mind, it's a little too far away. Then you realize you have to go in person to the gym in order to cancel. And they one one article I read interviewed a woman that said she just let the membership run on auto pay for months before you finally find a window to go and actually physically drive to a location to cancel. That is just a ridiculous amount of steps that you have to do. You can sign up online, but suddenly when you come time to cancel, you have to go in person to it. Everyone has a horror story relating to like the gym membership that they just keep running. There has been some pushback for this though. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, big business lobbying group, said the FTC's proposal is in effect micromanaging business practices. They're saying they overstepped their legal authority to pass these requirements that are just adding additional burdens to companies. But Lina Khan said, hey, if your business is dependent on trapping people or tricking people into paying for your subscription, that's not even a good business model to begin with. So it's fine to apply these rules to these shady practices. And I don't think a lot of consumers are going to push back against these rules either.
I think, yeah, if I had to say, this is one of the more popular things that the FTC has done. And it is the last big enforcement action before the election. And like we talked about earlier this week, Lina Khan's future at the head of the FTC is certainly in doubt. Even if Kamala Harris wins, we know that her billionaire backers are pushing her to oust Lina Khan as the head of the FTC because they say she's been too aggressive.
Now, we should say the only way to unsubscribe from Morning Brew Daily is to travel to Nuuk, Greenland, solve the riddle the troll has for you there, and then break 4 minutes in the mile. That is it, though. Easy as pie. Up next, put down your coffee mug. I don't want you choking because we've got Neal's Numbers coming up next.
Welcome to Neal's Numbers, the segment where I share 3 stats from the week's news that will make you feel smarter than someone speaking in a British accent. My first number is for anyone looking to buy an electric vehicle. Check out the used car lot. You could be getting a great deal. That's because used EV prices have plummeted 25% from the start of 2023. Now, according to Edmunds, the average selling price of a 3-year-old EV is $28,400, less than that of a gas engine vehicle of the same age. This is a total 180 from a few years ago. During the supply chain bottlenecks of the pandemic, some used EV models were selling for as much or more than new ones due to car shortages, according to the Wall Street Journal. But as those logistical kinks smoothed over and demand for EVs fell, so has the price of a used battery-powered car. Another major reason for the discounts, prices for new EVs have fallen dramatically, driving used car prices lower. Tesla was the ringleader of this price war when last year it slashed prices by up to 1/3 on some new models, forcing other automakers to do the same. Toby, the used EV market has gotten crushed, which is causing rapid depreciation for people who own those cars too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is Tesla's fault because they did drive a lot of those price decreases. Also, Hertz, remember the rental car company, went all in on buying all these Teslas and then completely rolled that back and dumped a lot of their Tesla fleet onto the used car market. So that further depressed prices. I don't want to say it's all Tesla's fault, but there are a couple of signs that do point to it being Tesla's fault. Another big trend that you can see in these electric car prices falling is that leasing has become way more popular. At the start of the year, 16% of electric vehicle sales at dealerships were leases. That has jumped to 80% now, according to Edmunds. And a big reason why that is happening is that some of these brands are applying that $7,500 EV tax credit to purchases directly at a lease deal. So you've seen the average monthly payment for an electric car lease fall from $950 at the start of the year to $582 by about mid-summer. So a lot of people are just going to the lot saying, wait a second, I can get this for essentially half the lease price that I could at the beginning of the year. Of course, I'm going to start leasing these electric vehicles. It could have longer term implications though, because if you are alleviating that industry or that inventory buildup right now, that could lead to this huge flood of lightly used EVs hitting the market a few months down the line when all those lease agreements come up. So we could be having this exact same conversation a few more months down the line, a few more years down the line as these lease agreements come up. So the price of electric vehicles might continue to fall as like these factors kind of come together to create a lot of this downward price pressure.
Yeah, and then a final bonus Neal's number, let's just say that, about the car market. Because of these depreciating car values, there are an astonishing number of underwater loans, which means that people owe more on their auto loans than the vehicle is worth. That has risen to nearly 1 in 4 consumers in the United States, which has pushed the national average for negative balances to a record high of more than $6,400. You're going to have to trust me with this next number. Americans' trust in media has fallen to a record low. According to a new Gallup survey, just 31% of Americans say they have a great deal or fair amount of trust in the mass media, the lowest level since this survey began in the 1970s. In fact, the news media is the least trusted group among 10 U.S. institutions Gallup asked about, ranking lower than Congress, the Supreme Court, and the legislative branch. While trust in the media is at a record low, there are some interesting differences between groups. When you zero in on political party, Democrats trust the media far more than Republicans, with 54% of Dems saying they have a great deal or fair amount of trust in the media compared to just 12% of Republicans. But there's a big split between young and old as well, with younger people not buying what news outlets are selling. Even among Democrats aged 18 to 29, just 31% trust the media compared to 74% of Dems 65 and older. Toby, there was a time when if Walter Cronkite said something, it was a stone cold fact. Now there is a major crisis of confidence.
Now you got to listen to Neal's numbers for stone cold facts. Yeah, you see stats like this, you have to go one step further. It's not only that trust is falling, it's just a lot of people are seeking their information elsewhere as well. Specifically, younger people, they are more likely to get their news online from social media, from potentially podcasts. So that is potentially why they just no longer turn to the media or put trust in media. You do see across the board, though, falling trust in institutions, American institutions, which is a little alarming. What I immediately thought of is the Nobel Peace Prize winners in economics wrote this book called Why Nations Fail, and a big portion of it is why institutions are so important to creating prosperous communities, prosperous countries. So when you see across the board declines in trust of these institutions, it makes you a little scared, or it makes you think that there's some maybe cracks forming, troubling signs for American democracy. But who knows? It is still a survey. Maybe people will rebound in certain years, but a little bit alarming to see these statistics.
And my final number is good news for anyone fed up with shrinkflation, aka everyone listening, because PepsiCo said that some of its bags of chips will come with more chips for the same price. Yesterday, the country's largest maker of salty snacks said that some Tostitos and Ruffles bonus bags will contain 20% more chips for the same price as standard bags. Plus, it's adding 2 additional small chip bags to its traditional 18-bag variety pack. Call it moreflation, the opposite of shrinkflation. With shrinkflation, companies like Pepsi have been accused of giving you less food for the same price. According to the watchdog website Consumer World, in 2021, Tostitos' hint of guacamole version shrank by, I don't know why that made me laugh, shrank by 1 ounce, and its hint of lime bag fell by 2 ounces. Consumers got really tired of this and as a consequence have bought fewer snacks from Pepsi, which owns major brands like Lay's, Doritos, Tostitos, and Ruffles. And in response to this sales slowdown, Pepsi is stuffing bags with more chips to make consumers feel like they're getting a better value. Toby, is this going to work?
Honestly, I'm just trying to wrap my head around. We have inflation, we have disinflation, we have shrinkflation, we got skimpflation, and now we got moreflation. It's very, very hard to keep track. I mean, they're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They are making these changes because consumers have been buying fewer snacks, so they want to prolong the shift. People have been going to private label brands, Walmart, Costco, instead of going to those name brands like Tostitos. So they are trying to, it's like essentially a marketing stunt a little bit, but also consumers have been beaten down recently. They have been seeing less volume in their hint of guacamole, their hint of lime chips. They're dropping from 13 ounces to 11 ounces. So when you see a more filled bag, like it probably does drive a little bit more brand loyalty than what we've been seeing. So I don't know. I think it might work because I hate when that little pocket of air at the top of a chip bag is so big. And if you can reduce that for me, then I will be more open to buying your chip bag.
It's not a little pocket of air.
Yeah, it's a big
pocket of air,
Yeah.
blimp level.
All right, ever since the Kindle came out, fans have implored Amazon to add a color version to its lineup of monochromatic e-readers. And turns out, if you ask, ye shall receive. Amazon rolled out its new line of e-readers yesterday, among them the Kindle ColorSoft, a device that is essentially the same as a normal Kindle Paperwhite model with one key difference. It swaps black and white for a new color display. Apparently, Amazon execs have always heard your calls for color. At the ColorSoft's launch event on Tuesday, the head of Kindle said, frankly, the technology just wasn't ready. Some of the issues it was trying to solve was introducing color without adding page turn latency or degrading resolution. But with some tech upgrades, including the addition of some LED pixels to enhance colors, Amazon thinks it's finally cracked the color code. Neal, this isn't iPad level color and resolution we're talking about, but it's not trying to be. It's just trying to be all the things a normal Kindle is with a $280 price point and now in color.
Yeah, the Kindle is not the first e-reader to bring color. That would be Kobo, which uses this e-ink technology. But I guess putting color into a Kindle is a little more complicated than you might think. It's not as complicated as maybe those machines ASML is making. But you do have to consider certain factors like battery life and not making it, not putting that backlight light that makes it hard to read and strains people's eyes. So it looks like they're coming it out. I guess you could see it would be nice to have a color pop for book covers and illustrations in books, and especially might be helpful for maybe comic books or graphic novels, even though that might be small. This is a 7-inch device, but it was interesting that this was the #1 requested feature for Kindle in its 17 years of existence.
Right. I think that some of the people they have in mind here are more of these hardcore, maybe younger book talk-esque audience who are a little bit more aesthetically minded. When they open their Kindle, they do want to browse their covers in color. The one thing that Amazon execs or some people are probably looking at next is that bringing back buttons beyond color. That was like the second most requested thing, is that they want to have physical buttons to change pages. So it sounds small, it sounds like not big changes, but these are the things that really drive like these hardcore consumers, which we have been seeing a rise of thanks to Book Talk. We have seen this whole subculture emerge around people posting videos about how much they love their Kindle. So if you want to see your book titles in color, then Amazon did the groundwork necessary to add color. We might be seeing buttons here. It's just these small tweaks that make you really drive that customer loyalty.
Yeah, and I would just say that we are in the midst of a Kindle Sans, because even though this product is 17 years old, it is absolutely booming right now, largely thanks to Book Talk, which is the sub community on TikTok that people talk about books, and they love the Kindle. That is their device of choice to read. I mean, Kindle sales in the past few years have been growing by double-digit percentages, and then a lot of that is driven by new customers. 60% of Kindle device sales last year came from first-time customers. So maybe the Kindle has had a little bit of a stagnation for many years there, but now it's absolutely on the rise. Let's wrap it up there. Thanks for starting your morning with us, and have a wonderful Thursday. For any questions, comments, or general feedback on the show, send an email to morningbrew@morningbrew.com. And if you're enjoying Morning Brew Daily, make sure your friends, family, and coworkers who just scroll through Instagram in the morning know about it. Here's Toby to get you jump-started on your sharing journey.
I, of course, want you to share today's show with someone that you want to go to a haunted house with. I gave you the playbook. Cozy up there, get the heart rates elevated, and go on a nice little date, courtesy of Morning Brew Daily, to a haunted house.
Let's roll the credits. Emily Milliron is our executive producer. Raymond Liu is our producer. Olivia Graham is our associate producer. Uchenna Ogu is our technical director. Billy Menino is on audio. You can always trust hair and makeup to never show up. Devin Emery is our chief content officer, and our show is a production of Morning Brew.
Great show today, Neal. Let's run it back tomorrow.